Chapter-7. Kaitlyn looked through her bag one more time. She could have sworn she brought her locket with her, but it was nowhere to be found.
"Mom, come on, I'm hungry."
Jack had given her a full 5 minutes before beginning his morning whine. Now he stood at the foot of her bed, holding his stomach as if he would keel over any moment. "Just a minute, bud. Do you remember if I brought my locket?"
"I don't know, Mom. Can we go eat now?"
"I suppose." She pawed through the bag one more time and sighed. Maybe she hadn't brought it with her, but she was almost positive she had. "Good morning, Kaitlyn. Jack," Margie said as they entered the kitchen. "How do cinnamon rolls sound for breakfast?" Jack's eyes danced.
"Delicious. But are they almost ready? I've been starving for hours."
"Oh, it wasn't that long, Jack. Hey, Margie, no one has turned in a locket, have they?" "No, I don't think so. Did you lose one?" Kaitlyn helped herself to a mug of coffee. "Yeah, the one my mother gave me. I'm almost sure I wore it here, but took it off the day we painted. I thought I left it on the dresser in the room, but now I can't find it." "Oh, dear. Well, no one has brought it to me, but I'll ask the other guests to look, and I'll certainly keep an eye out for it." "Thanks. I'll leave you my address before we head out today so you can send it to me if you find it." Jack looked up from the table.
"We're leaving today? I don't want to go yet."
Kaitlyn added a little cream and then joined Jack at the table to wait for the cinnamon rolls. "I have to get back to work, Jack." "You can't leave before the photographer gets here," Margie said, adding her 2 cents to the conversation. "I'm sure he or she will want to meet the decorator who did such a wonderful job." Kaitlyn looked from her son to Margie and rolled her eyes. "Fine, I guess I'm outnumbered. We'll stay until the photographer gets here."
"Actually, since that will be tomorrow, and the day after is Christmas Eve, you really should just stay until Christmas," Dillon said from the doorway.
Kaitlyn hadn't heard him approach, and she turned to him now with a small smile. "Not you, too." He shrugged and walked to the cabinet to grab his own mug.
"Please, Mom."
3 pairs of eyes looked expectantly at Kaitlyn, and she threw up her hands. "Fine, but only through Christmas, and then I have to get back to work." "Well, since you did such an amazing job, I could give you more work here at the lodge. I need to redo the guest rooms, you know." Margie smiled at her as she placed the cinnamon rolls on the table. "I can sketch up some designs after I wrap presents today. I was just going to wrap empty boxes, but as it appears I'll be here through Christmas, I suppose I'll go shopping today."
"Can I come too?"
Jack asked, as his eyes roamed over the rolls. Kaitlyn knew he was looking for the biggest one. "Sure, you can come." She picked a roll for herself and placed it on her plate. The heavenly scent of cinnamon and sugar floated up to her nose. She shouldn't be eating this. Her pants already felt a little tighter, but she could get back to her workouts in a few days.
"I'd be happy to drive you."
Dillon caught her eye as he sat down across the table from her. "Why not? The more the merrier. Would you like to come too, Margie?" "No, I've got things to do around here, but I might give Dillon a list of things to get for me."
"Be happy to, Mom."
As Margie disappeared to take food into the dining room for the other guests, a silence fell on the trio. Kaitlyn dropped her eyes to the cinnamon roll, unsure what to say to Dillon, especially in front of Jack. Dillon must have felt similarly because every once in a while she would see him look at her as if he wanted to say something, but then he would close his mouth and shake his head ever so slightly.
"I'm all done, Mom. Can we go now?"
Jack asked as he finished his cinnamon roll. Icing and sugar was smeared across his face and coated his fingers. "Go wash up, and by the time you're done, Dillon and I should be ready." Jack nodded and bounded out of the chair. When he was out of the room, Kaitlyn took the moment to clear the air. "While we're out, Dillon, let's not say anything about last night. I want to talk more, but not in front of Jack."
Dillon nodded. "As long as we get a chance to talk before you leave."
"I promise." Dillon watched Kaitlyn as she scanned the shelves of the store. She was so beautiful, and she deserved something amazing. The question was, what? Back in high school, he would have known exactly what to get her, but now it had been so long. He moved over to a jewelry case, and a charm bracelet caught his eye. He could get her charms that represented her interests from high school, and then he could add more as he got to know her better. It was the perfect gift.
"Can I help you with something?"
One of the salesmen had approached while Dillon was scanning the case. He looked up to make sure Kaitlyn was out of earshot.
"Can I get that bracelet?" "Ah, yes, that is beautiful. Will you be needing some charms?" "Yes, please. Can I have the music note, the paint palette, and do you have something that represents a mother?" "Of course."
The salesman pulled out the bracelet and the charms Dillon had already indicated.
"How many children and what gender?" "Just one, a boy." "Then this should be perfect."
He held up a tiny charm of a mother holding the hand of a boy.
"Perfect."
Dillon glanced up again, but Kaitlyn was on the other side of the shop.
"And how about one that represents love?"
The salesman followed Dillon's eyes and smiled.
"Ah, yes."
He pulled out a tray.
"Here are the love charms."
Dillon scanned the offerings and pointed to one that called out to him.
"That one. And can you please wrap them separately?"
"Of course, sir."
The salesman totaled the order, and while Dillon pulled out his credit card, the man began wrapping the delicate gifts. With the transaction finished, he handed Dillon 2 small boxes and a gift bag. "Jack wants to play in the snow. Can you take a break?" Kaitlyn's voice came from just behind his right shoulder.
"Yep, all done. Let's go."
He followed her out to the little park area in the center of town. It was a perfect enclosed area for kids to play in the snow while their parents sipped coffees or nibbled on treats at the nearby tables. As Jack ran over to some other kids, Dillon and Kaitlyn grabbed a nearby table and sat down. "I thought this would give us a chance to finish our conversation from last night," Kaitlyn said.
"I'd like that."
"You might not like all of it, but here goes. When you left to go travel the world, I believed you would come back and we'd end up together. But as time went on, I began to realize you were never coming back. I can't say it did wonders for my self-esteem." Dillon cringed. He had never really thought about how his actions affected Kaitlyn. "I was pretty low when I met Jerry, and at first I thought he was everything I was looking for. We got married, and for a time everything was okay. But once I got pregnant, he began to change. He grew angry and began to yell. After Jack was born, the abuse turned physical, and I knew I had to get out of there. Thankfully, he didn't fight me for a divorce. I think he just never wanted to be a father. But Jack has never really known his father."
"I'm so sorry, Kaitlyn."
She shook her head. "I don't tell you this for sympathy. I tell you because I have a feeling Jack will attach himself to the first male figure in his life. It's why I have to be sure before we start dating." Dillon glanced over at Jack, who was building a snowman with another boy. Was he ready to be a father figure? He hadn't been ready to propose, but he was sure that had more to do with Shauna than being ready to be married.
Kaitlyn, I don't guarantee what kind of father figure I'll be, but what I can say is that I've been comparing every woman I've dated to you over the last 10 years, and all of them have fallen short.
She smiled and ducked her head. Dillon reached over and grabbed her hand. Her eyes flicked up to his, but she didn't pull her hand away. They sat in silence, watching Jack play and enjoying each other's company. A few minutes later, Jack bounded over to them. Kaitlyn dropped Dillon's hand before he got too close.
Mom, can we get some hot chocolate and a pretzel?
I suppose we can do that. Do you have anything else you need to get for your mother? Dillon pulled out his list and scanned it. He had bought everything his mother had asked for, plus his gift for Kaitlyn.
No, I have everything I need. How about you?
Yep, I'm good too. Feel like a snack then?
Have you ever known me to turn down a soft pretzel?
It was the one snack he and Kaitlyn had fought over when they were dating in high school. You looked great tonight, Kaitlyn said, as she ran up to Dillon after the game. She looked even better, and he wanted to kiss her, but she held in her hands his kryptonite. The smell of the soft pretzel assaulted his nose and sent his stomach rumbling. He hadn't eaten in hours, and after running back and forth on the field, his hunger had intensified.
Thanks, babe, and I see you brought me some food. That was so thoughtful. You must have known I was starving.
He reached for the pretzel, but she moved her arm away. Not on your life. This is mine. She flashed him a wicked smile as she leaned back and took a giant bite.
You little...
He grabbed her arm, pulling her close. As she fell into his chest, her arm neared his face and he snatched a bite from her pretzel. Hey, that was mine, she said, as she pulled her arm away and batted his chest with her other hand. He grinned at her as he finished chewing.
Thank you for sharing. Next time, buy 2.
She narrowed her eyes at him for just a moment before tearing the pretzel in half and giving part to him. He took the pretzel, but before he ate it, he pulled her close once again and kissed her. She never bought just one pretzel after that time, or if she did, she ate it before coming up to him. Kaitlyn rolled her eyes. This time, you get your own, she said with a laugh. Come on. It warmed his heart that she seemed to remember the incident as well, and he stood and followed her to the bakery. He wanted to grab her hand again, but she had made it clear that she didn't want to do anything in front of Jack. At least, not yet. He would respect that, but it didn't keep his heart from beating into overtime at the thought of kissing her. Nor did it stop the jolt of electricity that shot down his legs when the wind blew just right and the smell of vanilla from her body wash tickled his nose. No, it didn't stop those things at all. After the pretzels were bought and eaten, the trio returned to the truck and made their way back to the lodge. Dillon was surprised to see Julian waiting for them as they pulled into the parking lot. He hurried to Kaitlyn's door before Dillon could turn the truck off. Why, thank you, Julian, Kaitlyn said, as he opened her door and held out a hand. To what do I owe this gesture? Though her words were kind, Dillon could hear the hesitation in them as she took Julian's hand and climbed out of the truck. Dillon had no idea what Julian's angle was, but he hurried out of the truck and to her side just in case.
Miss Fields told me you were missing your locket. I looked around today and found it near the tree. It must have fallen off while you were decorating.
He held up the necklace, but made no move to give it back. Oh, thank you, Julian. Kaitlyn held out her hand, but Julian smiled down at her.
I could help you fasten it if you like.
Oh, well, all right. Kaitlyn turned her back to Julian and lifted her hair. Her eyes displayed her discomfort as she caught Dillon's gaze. Julian, on the other hand, smiled as he placed the necklace around Kaitlyn's neck. Dillon forced himself to keep his hands at his side. A part of him wanted to knock Julian's hand away so he could fasten the necklace himself. Like Kaitlyn, there was something about Julian that bugged him, but he chalked it up to jealousy. It was clear the groundskeeper was attracted to Kaitlyn, but Dillon had finally found her again, and he wasn't about to lose her. Kaitlyn tried not to react as Julian's hands touched her neck. She was grateful he had found her necklace, but there was something about him that sent the tiny hairs on the back of her neck standing on end. "Well, I better get these packages inside," she said when he finished. "They aren't going to wrap themselves."
"I'll help,"
Julian said as he stepped toward the truck bed.
"No need," Dillon said, cutting him off. "We've got it covered."
Kaitlyn glanced at Dillon, surprised by the hardness in his voice. Evidently, he wasn't a fan of Julian's either. Julian held up his hands and backed away.
"All right, if you say so."
"Mom, can I get out now?"
Startled, Kaitlyn looked to the truck. Jack was still inside, patiently waiting to be let out. The incident with Julian had shaken her so much she had almost forgotten her son. "I'm so sorry," she said as she opened the door. He shrugged as he jumped down.
"It's okay. I'm glad you got your necklace back."
"Me too, buddy. Why don't you run inside while Dillon and I get the bags?"
"Okay."
As he bounded into the lodge, Kaitlyn turned grateful eyes on Dillon. "Thank you."
"No problem."
He grabbed a few bags from the back of the truck and held them out to her.
"I can tell he makes you uncomfortable."
Kaitlyn sighed as she took the bags. "I don't even know why. He seems like a perfectly nice guy. There's just something I can't put my finger on." Dillon grabbed the last few bags.
"Well, I, for one, don't like the way he looks at you."
"And how is that?" Dillon glanced around before leaning close to her.
"Like he wants to do this."
He placed his lips on hers for just a second, but it was all the time she needed to know she wanted more. As he pulled back, she looked up at him with a smile. "This is definitely a conversation I want to continue later, but I really do need to get those packages wrapped." He grinned back at her.
"Then I suppose we better head inside."